We've talked a lot about automation so far, and there's a ton you can do with them. But what if your trigger is supposed to be something outside of ODOO? This would be like having a paper airplane come flying in your window and start the whole mousetrap for you. If you're feeling a little bit lost, you may want to check out this video. Anyway, not everything in our company is going to happen inside of ODOO. We're just not to that point yet. So today we're going to talk about how we can use webhooks to get a trigger outside of ODOO to do something for us inside of ODOO. Now I just started in webhooks and it took me a little bit of time to figure everything out. So I want to take this step by step for you and do a very simple example so that you can get comfortable before we go deeper in this. So to make everything work here, we're going to need to use another platform. There are various platforms that work like this for automation, but we're using Zapier today. Again, Zapier is not entirely unique here. It has some great features, but really what it does is it allows us to have triggers in a bunch of different services that then can be relayed to other systems. Now today, I'm not going to go through Zapier in depth, but if you want me to do that, go ahead and drop it in the comments below. So real quick, just to make sure we're all clear on our steps here, we're going to go through this. So in Zapier, we're going to have a trigger, which is our entry inside of our survey. That's going to kick off a webhook, which is then going to send a message all the way over to ODOO, which is then going to be our trigger to create a task inside of a specific project. Now, all the task is going to have in it is that a survey has been filled out and we want to follow up. We're not breaking down any of the information inside of the webhook today. We'll do that in another video. All right, so with this webhook, first we need to set up an automated action to catch this in ODOO. So make sure you're in developer mode and then go into Studio for me real quick. We're also going to want to duplicate our tab so we have a nice reference tab, as always. So we can go to automations or webhooks here. We're going to go to automations just for fun, go to new, and our trigger is going to be external on webhook. And we're going to call this new survey filled out follow-up. So breaking down the rest of the pieces, this is our URL. This is where we're going to catch the webhook. We want to turn on log calls just to make our lives a little bit easier. Every time something tries to hit this URL, we'll get a log note so that we can see if there's a problem here. So we want to turn that on too. Then we'll get into our action real quick. So for our action, like I said, we're going to go ahead and create a record, but we're not going to do it through this one. We're going to execute code because it gives us a little bit more flexibility here. And in the interest of time, I'm not going over the create method again or any Python. If you need some help with that, go ahead and check out this video here. But this is the create method. We're going to go ahead and create a new task in our project for survey follow-up, and we're going to give it the title, please follow up on new survey. So let's save and close. And now we've got our listening automation set up properly here. So we can head over to Zapier. So in Zapier, just like in ODOO, we have triggers that we need to set up. Those triggers kick off an action, which our action is going to be our webhook. But let's focus on our trigger first. So our trigger today is going to be a survey that we set up in Google Forms. It's simple, it's just webhook test. But we're going to set up our trigger so that whenever we fill out this survey, or hopefully somebody else fills out the survey, it's going to kick off a webhook that hits our automated action here in ODOO. So let's go ahead and set up our trigger here. We're going to come in, we're going to look for Google Forms, because that's where our survey is. Ah, great, there it is. And then we're going to go to our event and say we have a new form response and continue. Now we need to go ahead and log into this. So I'm going to go in, do all that real quick, let you watch because I want to make sure you feel safe with this. Okay. And looking at it, we have it right there. Okay, that's our account, and we're going to go ahead and look at our trigger. So I'm going to move myself for a second here so that you can see what's going on. So our trigger, we need to come in and choose our form. So we're going to refresh results, make sure we're getting the right stuff. Okay, let's say test. I should be getting webhook test. There it is. Okay, good. We'll continue on. And then we're going to allow it to test our trigger, and it should automatically pull that in. If not, there should be a button right here that says test trigger, but it looks like it's pulling in our information just fine. And then it's going to want us to hop to the action, but we're going to take a breather for a second. So I'm up here still to give you a bit more room, but let's dive into this action here. So we want webhooks, which is a premium service, so we're going to have to pay for it in the end. But let's go ahead and choose an event. So we want this to be post, okay? And we're going to go ahead and continue with that. The URL that we want needs to be the URL from right here. Go ahead and copy that, bring it over here, and put it in. Now we want to make sure our payload type is JSON. That'll be important later on, not for this video, but future. And come in, we're going to leave the data, keep that. We want all the data. Don't need any files, unflatten, yes. And the rest of this is looking really good. So we're going to click continue here. Let's click test step and see what we get. Oh no, we got a 500 error, but we can fix this. Now, lucky for us, I've spent a bit of time with webhooks over the last couple days, quite a bit. So what we did is turned on our log calls. We want to look at our logs real quick and see what's going on. So we see it tried to push it. We come in here and look, and we've got a problem with our code right here, which honestly, I don't like this with code one bit. So we're going to go ahead and replace it and see what that does. So the code it didn't like is actually the default code from ODOO, which is a bit frustrating, but it's understandable in a way. What we're trying to call, if we look through this whole thing, is we're looking at our payload. So that's essentially the JSON that's sent from Zapier. And we're looking for a field that's called _ID. Well, if we come back here and we look in our data, we don't have any such field. So yeah, it's going to error out. We do, however, have ID, no underscore, just capitalized. So we're going to come back to this and we're going to put in the ID. So throw me back up top here. We've changed it out, made it so it's the ID. Let's go ahead and test this again. Okay. Now we've got another error. So the error that we're getting is still related to this code. And good thing for you guys and for me, I've experienced this before and I've got a workaround. So this code here actually doesn't work too well. And it's kind of a pain because it's ODOO's default code. But in the video that was done by one of ODOO's employees, he actually used this instead. So we're going to go ahead and do model.browse int payload, and then we're going to make sure and change this to capital ID. And we're going to try this again. And yes, I love you guys and I want your life to be easy, so I'll go ahead and drop that code in the description. So I tested it out and it still didn't work, but let me show you the solution here. So I took a breather and I went ahead and I looked at the logs again. So if we look at the logs, we're going to get info and then an error if we get an error. So looking at the info, I don't see anything here that looks like an ID. So going back to the logs and looking at the error, it says, currently I'm trying to shove something that's not an integer into an integer field. That's my problem here. Going back over to Zapier and going into our trigger and looking at the kind of data that we're getting from the test, the ID is this guy. Yeah, that's not going to transform into an integer nicely. So our problem again is this guy. We're looking for an integer here. So we're going to go ahead and clear all this stuff out. We don't need it to target a record, so we're just going to give it an integer to use. Now when we come back to Zapier and test, it works just fine. Now, is this an acceptable solution? Well, yeah, and let me show you why. This guy right here is only important if the actions that I'm running here need a record set for them. And we're not using these. So we've done a fair bit of error tracking and a fair bit of problem solving, but I wanted you to have the experience of going through that so you know you can work through these errors and you know you can figure out what's going wrong with webhooks and you can still use this powerful tool. All that being said, let's see this guy in action. Before anything else, make sure you come back and publish your Zap. It's not going to do anything if you don't publish it. And I had published it once before now, so we're going to go ahead and publish it as V1. So let's leave that there. Then we're going to go to our webhook test and submit another response. Put Andrew Law, submit that, and then we'll see what happens. And heck yes, we did it. So we got there, which is awesome. I wanted to make sure and take you through step by step with a practical example with systems you're likely to use. So hopefully this was useful to you. In our next video, we're going to do a more complicated example. We're not going to go through all the steps, but we are going to go through how you can dissect the payload that you get. So all that data that you get in JSON format, we want to make it so that we can actually create meaningful records, not just notifications of what's happening. So please tune in for that. And please let me know if there's anything else I can help you with in the comments. Thanks, guys.